Okay. Hello, my name is Darrel Nelson. I'm the exhibits director for Deadwood History, and I'm standing in one of our 4 sites, the Adams Museum, and I'm in an area called Building a City. The last couple of sessions where I've talked like this, we've talked about a different perspective, history through a different lens. Same story, different way of looking at it. So a couple times ago, it was about how corporations were really the foundation for the settling of the West, not individual families or gunslingers. Something bigger was going on. And the last time I talked about how you could look at any character in the frontier and say, how much money were they making? So today I'd like to talk about paperwork. Basically the foundation of the whole frontier story that we think is really about individuals and courage. A good place to start would be the prospectors. We think of them as carrying gold pans and guns and very physical kind of life. But in fact, even what they did depended on bureaucracy. When they came here, many of them had experience with the 1849 gold rush in California. And there they established rules, like who gets to have what. So the rules that they had when they got here, 1875, 1876, was that if you were the first one to make a claim, you could have 300 feet of creek length from rim to rim. And as you can imagine, it doesn't take a whole lot of those to use up all the miles of creek that there were. Well, my point is, they made their claim, they put it on paper, or they got someone to write it down for them, and there was a record keeper for the prospectors. Even their venture depended on paperwork, and claim jumping had a lot to do with, no, I put it right there, the record keeper has it. So very early in Deadwood's story, they knew, lawyers from out of town knew that they would make money here because there'd be lots of contesting of these gold claims. They were right. In a nearby exhibit to my left, you can see a list of all the law agencies that were here because they knew they could make money if all the conflicts that were going to be based on paperwork. I mentioned I'm standing in an area called Building a City. It's surrounded by documents. So, for example, to my left, there's a drawing of a school that got built. Even in old frontier Deadwood, there were architectural drawings that were planned, especially for public buildings. It needed paperwork, people who did paper stuff at desks. To my right over here, newspapers. Newspapers were the core of the frontier story for information, for exposing corruption, for informing, for gathering people together. Newspapers are a bunch of people who write, who work with paper, who print. They're in an office doing things on paper. Another example is one of our features here, exact copies of the many kinds of documents that local banks sent around the world. It's paper. All these big transactions depended on someone writing, someone notarizing, someone making copies, and someone sending it. That reminds me that one of the biggest ways that stagecoaches made money was moving paper, U.S. mail contracts, then as now. Or another one called Be It Ordained. This is an exact copy of Deadwood City statutes, paper. So in here, the city government can say to somebody, oh, by the way, you owe this fine because you broke that statute law. So in there were all the records of how much you paid for the various fines, who could do what, why you couldn't have dead animals on the street. It was all written down. Or another one, Deadwood promoting itself, 1892, 1893, another over there at that desk. It's paper, people printing stuff, sending paper around with photographs. My point is, there's an army of people moving paper and working with it. Another aspect of the whole frontier story we think of as, well, it's about settlers, individual families kind of striking out on their own and working their plot of land and proving up, as we say, that wouldn't have worked unless there was an office somewhere that recorded, so that when they proved up or they didn't, the paperwork, the documentation was there saying, now it's your land. Perhaps you remember a movie in which, in the end, the hardworking family gets to say, we got the claim, or we got the deed, or some kind of document was shown saying, so-and-so really is the son of so-and-so in the movie. It's not an unusual theme in Western movies. So in the end, we might think, well, how about the idea that the gun that won the West, a chunk of steel. Well, actually, it's not really true because other steel really won the West. Barbed wire, moldboard plows, and railroads. But even guns depend on the paperwork. Samuel Colt was deeply enmeshed in lawsuits for copyright protection. So even guns, the most basic thing about the Frontier story, depended on bureaucrats. Somebody somewhere notarizing, making copies, keeping records, preserving it. So when you think of the Frontier, don't think necessarily that guns won the West. Think bureaucrats won the West. Thank you.